Hostage, a Todd Mills mystery, book 3 in the series. Arthur R.D. Zimmerman, publisher, Scribble Pub. Narrator, Eric Aust. Chapter 23. When the limo pulled up in front of Rawlins' place, Todd proceeded as if he didn't have a clue that anyone was following him. He thanked the chauffeur, climbed out of the Cadillac, and stood in the middle of the street looking up at the clapboard house and making sure that whoever was in the car that had pulled over at the end of the block saw him. It had once been a typical home for this area, a Minneapolis four-square with a kitchen, living room, dining room, and a staircase, each occupying a separate corner of the downstairs. But during the Depression, it had been carved into two apartments, one up, one down. For years, Rawlins had rented the upstairs place, where a lamp now burned in one window, but Todd knew that the light didn't mean that Rawlins was home or had stopped by. Leave it to a cop to keep a few of his halogens on timers. Consumed with worry, he quickly crossed the concrete walk, across the boards of the front porch and to the door. He rang once, barely waited, then took out Rawlins' key, which he'd gotten in an exchange as symbolic for both of them as the giving of rings. Opening the lock, Todd charged upstairs, taking the steps two at a time and bounding into the living room. "Rawlins!" called Todd, his voice booming. "Rawlins, are you here? Rawlins!" There wasn't so much as an echo, and Todd quickly moved through the small dining room, the plain kitchen with the small table, the bedroom, and finally into the bath at the very end. No one and nothing, not even a single item out of order. He'd been hoping to find Rawlins here, of course, but had feared something worse, namely that Rawlins might have somehow hurt himself instead. Everything was perfectly fine, and there was no sign that Rawlins had been home. Todd hesitated in the kitchen, leaned against one of the white metal cabinets, and placed a hand to his forehead. Okay, there was one thing he needed to find, but where would Rawlins have put it? His desk? Todd returned to the bedroom, his eyes falling first, of course, on the mattress, where he'd spent a handful of nights in lustful tangle. Crossing to the other side, he went to the small wooden desk and pulled on the long arm of an architect's lamp. He flicked on the bulb and opened the top metal drawer, but found nothing except pens, paper, clips, tape, a beat-up old calculator, and a variety of other home office junk. Pulling open the right drawer, he found boxes of new checks, some bills, and letters. He moved to the drawer beneath that and found what he was looking for, a trove of photographs, 20, maybe 30 envelopes of glossy prints that never had and never would make it into any album. For while Rawlins loved to snap pictures, he was not an organized soul. Todd opened the first envelope, found pictures of the two of them cross-country skiing. Trying to ignore any sentimental thoughts, Todd moved right on, flying through envelopes of Christmas, a Halloween ball, a family reunion, on and on, until he found it. The stack of pictures Rawlins had pulled out just a few days after Kurt had died. Todd shuffled through the first 10 until he came to one of Kurt and another man seated on a log. Recalling that Rawlins had mentioned he'd taken it while camping up in the Boundary Waters 4 or 5 years ago, Todd tried to remember what Rawlins had said about this guy. Pictured with Kurt, unable to, he jammed the small print in his pocket, stuffed the others back in the drawer, and snapped off the light. Staying close to one wall, he returned to the living room, a boxy, rather unattractive space. It was common knowledge that Rawlins didn't have the queer decorator gene, with a pathetic couch, a TV, a couple of chairs, and 2 windows up front. A single lamp burned on the other side of the room, and Todd slowly made his way up to one of the windows, but it was no use. He realized the many blinds were pulled completely up, and Todd couldn't check the street without revealing himself. He turned around, heading down the hall, through the kitchen, and to the back door. A large exterior staircase had been tacked on to the rear of the house, and Todd now made his way down to the yard around the edge of the house and into the dark that sliced between Rawlins's and the neighboring home. Proceeding to the front, he peered out at the street, his breath smoking in the cool night air. Parked cars, most of them older models and most of them pocked with rust scales, lined the street. There was no doubt in Todd's mind that he'd been followed over here, though he hadn't been able to discern just who or in fact how many people had been in the other vehicle that had tailed the limousine. So what could this be about? It could be the police, he supposed, but why would they monitor Todd's coming and goings unless they thought he was somehow involved in Clarendon's abduction? Somewhere a car door opened and closed, the sound muffled in the cool night, followed by steps on the gritty sidewalk. Todd edged closer to the corner of the house, but didn't see a soul. Walking along, scanning the street again, his eyes proceeded up the block, car by car, Ford to Honda to Olds to Toyota. And there it was, the front of the vehicle that had tailed the limo from Todd's condo, all the way over here, bending over carefully, lest they spy him, spy them, spying him. Todd caught a glimpse through the windshield of the driver. Definitely a man. Whether or not he was alone, however, Todd couldn't tell. Suddenly heard it again. The footsteps. Were they different ones? These were quick and fleeting. The noise ricocheting up the streets between the houses. Was someone running up to Rawlins' house? Todd turned his head from side to side, but couldn't see a thing. Wait, the fear plunging through him. He realized that the footsteps were simply bouncing off the neighboring house. Ah, shit. Someone was charging him from behind. Todd spun around just as a huge figure descended, grabbing and hurling him against the house, flattening him against the clapboard. Todd noted that his attacker had a gun, and he lifted his arms, tried to protect himself, but the other guy was too strong, too professional. When Todd saw one of the large arms come swinging up to his face, he thought, oh crap, this is really going to hurt. But instead of a solid fist smashing his jaw, a massive hand was thrown over his mouth. Keep quiet, demanded the figure. Don't move. Recognizing his assailant, Todd stared at the man. Him? Someone followed you here, whispered Lyle. Johnny Clareton's bodyguard. Shocked by the other man's presence, Todd barely moved his head up and down. Who are they? The hand was lifted from Todd's mouth, and Todd spouted with a question of his own. How the hell do you know I was followed? Because I told you to, said Lyle, his deep voice hushed. There are 2 guys out there. 2? Yeah, 2 of them in that car down the street. Who are they? I don't have any idea. Yeah, right. Lyle flattened Todd even further against the wall, raised his pistol, and placed the barrel deep into Todd's temple. Once again, pal, who are those guys out there? And once again, asshole, I don't know, shot back Todd. Were you involved with the kidnapping, Clareton? Absolutely not. Todd felt Lyle's angry eyes burning into him, and then all of a sudden, the handgun was pulled away, and Todd was released. Straightening his shirt, Todd moved a foot or 2 away and quipped, I guess I can now comfortably say that no friend of Johnny Clareton is a friend of mine. Lyle stepped up to the edge of the house and peered down the street. So what the hell's going on around here? That's a very good question. Right then. There was only one thing Todd was certain of, that he didn't want to hang out with Lyle. And as he started for the street, he said, and I guess there's only one way to find out. Hey, you idiot, snapped Lyle, grabbing Todd by the arm. What are you trying to do? Get yourself killed? You're the cowboy swinging a gun around. Todd jerked himself free, wasting no time in heading for the street and away from Lyle, who stayed planted in the shadows of the house. Todd cut across the grass, across the sidewalk, and stepped into the street, walking right up the middle of the pavement. The mysterious car was parked about a quarter of a block away and pointed toward Todd. So Lyle was right, mused Todd as he neared the sedan. There were, in fact, 2 guys, a balding guy behind the wheel and someone else. Someone next to him whom Todd dearly hoped he recognized. Once a viewer had alerted Todd about a stalker in her neighborhood, and Todd had gone over and staked it out, watching the guy for 3 days, and finally climbing out of the van and just walking over to the guy, with the photographer's camera rolling behind him. The man was so stunned that Todd was approaching him so directly that he did nothing, just sat there until Todd more or less cornered him, and that's what he hoped. He thought, as he now raised his right hand in greeting, would happen with this situation. But the direct approach didn't look as if it was going to work on this one. The vehicle's engine came to a sudden and loud roar. Todd didn't like the sound of that, but he proceeded on, his hand still held up in friendly greeting, and a stupid smile plastered on his face. He flinched slightly when he saw the wheels turning and the nose of the car pulling out, but he pressed on. However, when the car shot out of its parking place and started racing down the street toward him, Todd slowed and quietly muttered to himself, Hi guys, what's going on? He stopped dead, wanting the guy in the passenger seat to be one person in particular. Todd kept his eyes aimed on him, but in fact the car wasn't going to stop. That much was clear because it was zeroing right in on Todd, gaining speed with each foot, yet Todd didn't move. He didn't flinch until the last possible moment, and only when he was positive the man in the passenger seat wasn't Steve Rawlins did Todd jump out of the way, throwing himself between two parked cars as the silver Chrysler roared past him and into the night. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.